Just to say, it's really difficult. I can't introduce Narad really because there's a little too much to say. Because when I came to Auroville in 1974, he had already been here for many years, and in the Montremondere nursery, that's where I went first. So I was very privileged to be there in those early years when we had to plant the 2 million trees, which was actually 3 million. The goats ate about 1 million, I think. Anyway, Narad, 61 years ago, Narad met the mother and got some direct contact with how Auroville should be built, what is the spirit of Auroville, and we're really hoping he will share that. I can just say a few other things about Narad. Of course, he has written books, botanical books. He's an expert in the plumeria, the frangipani flower, which Mother called psychological perfection. He comes from a background in his family. They were botanists and nursery people. He had a huge garden in America also called Mother's Garden. He's been involved in bringing the flowers to the mother for the flower book. So many of you know that book, Flowers and Their Significances. That book, he and Richard from the ashram coordinated bringing all the flowers to the mother. She gave all the significances. Then he was involved in the printing. And his wife, Mary Helen, she did all the little sketches in the book. And Shally is here. Shally was in the nursery when I came. Such a sweet little girl. And now she's still sweet, but she's much bigger. And we had a wonderful time there in those days. And we did a lot of work. And there's a lot of stories, but I'll leave it to Narad to give you some background and some of the stories. And of course, this series is about how are we going to get ourselves together at this point in time? Because, of course, you all know the crisis situation in Auroville, and we are going to have to take a big leap to bring it all back together and kind of realign it with the spirit, because so much has happened. And so that's what we're trying to do here. So as people understand the meaning of Auroville, what it's all about, hopefully they will then come around. And of course we have, fortunately, like Gilles Guigon has gotten together these 2 new volumes of everything the mother wrote about Auroville. So if anyone reads that, you cannot help but get what mother wanted. So we have the documentation, and Narad has also done another project over the years. He has interviewed so many ashramites and so many Aurovillians about their experiences in Auroville. So all of those things are archived. So in other words, we have all the information we need. Now we just have to translate that into action. So with that, Narad, would you give us a start?
I was going to talk to you first because you mentioned the rain. And Mother's last darshan, it was pouring rain. We were standing in 6 inches of water, and the rain was pouring down on us. And naturally, many people put their umbrellas up. It was so powerful. So Mother goes inside her room, and she says to Udar, one of her secretaries, "You see, Udar, I send down the grace," and they put their umbrellas up to stop it. Interesting. So enjoy the rain when it comes. It is the divine grace. It's one of the things that is holding Auroville together, this divine grace of the Divine Mother. So I met Mother in 1961, 61 years ago. And at that time, she spoke to me only about music. And she said, "You must bring down a new music." And since I had been studying on a scholarship for the Metropolitan Opera, and I was singing in New York City, probably in 6 or 7 different languages, I said, Mother, I don't know how to combine poetry and music. Mother said, no, no, you must go far above words and bring down the pure music. And this is how now, 20 years already, the Om Choir has been singing at Savitri Bhavan. But we began in 61 years ago. Shraddhavan, myself, Mary Helen, and a few others would meet together, and we would sing things. We would read poems and sing and try to open ourselves for this new music to descend into us that would have the power to transform this world. And indeed, it does. People have had endless experiences that I've written in a book called The Descent of the New Music. But it wasn't until 1968, my first wife, Annie, whom you knew, and I were driving in a blizzard, and it was coming down a mountain, and the mountain was like glass. And these ladies had parked their car perpendicular to the traffic. And Annie went through the windshield, covered in stitches. And Mother said, there will be no scars. And the moment I heard that from Mother, I knew I will have to get vitamin E capsules and put them on every scar. In the end, there were no scars. The face was covered with scars. In the end, no scars, just as Mother said. Now, in 1968, on Annie's birthday, we met Mother again. And it was the first time Annie had met her. So 3 of us entered, one fellow from Los Angeles Center, and then Mother looks at Annie. And I tell you, this something has never left me ever since that moment. It's alive today. She says to Annie, this is not the first time we have met. You have been with me many times before. Many, many times. Then Mother turns to me and she says, you wouldn't like to come to Auroville in a few years? I feel you can do something there. And I said, Mother, whatever is your wish. But it was not to be a few years, because just a month or 2 later, Udar writes to me and he says, Mother wants you to prepare to come and build the gardens of the Matrimandir. So I write back to Mother. Should I do practical work, as I've done most of my life with my father, or should I go to college? Mother says, both. So I work during the day and I go to college at night. But then only 9 months later, Mother sends me a telegram, a biento, see you soon. And we sell everything that we had, and he comes first, and then I come. We meet Mother again, and Mother speaks to me about the gardens. And she says, quote, it must be a thing of great beauty, of such a beauty that when men enter, they will say, ah, this is it. And they will experience physically and concretely the significance of each garden. In the garden of youth, they will know youth. In the garden of bliss, they will know bliss. Then Mother raises her hand and she shows me in a spiral, and she says to me, one must know how to move from consciousness to consciousness. Well, we began the nursery, and it was hard work. In those days, we had very little electricity, barely enough water from the pump house, and in the heat of the summer, without any fan or anything, we would soak a sheet in water, wring it out, and throw it over our head and body and get a couple of hours sleep a night. This is such a new Auroville that I'm seeing now. I knew 100 or 200 people. You must know 2,000. So I'm what they call now, they have opened up a new category, and it's called a returning Aurovillian. And I'm very hopeful that many of the people we knew before will come back and help us, because we are in a very critical time. And that critical time should not be critical. We should be living in harmony, collective harmony. I want to read from Sri Aurobindo. All that is He. And He is the more than all that is. And we ourselves, though we know it not, are being of His being, force of His force, conscious with a consciousness derived from His. Even our mortal existence is made out of His substance, and there is an immortal within us that is a spark of the light and bliss that are forever. No matter whether by knowledge, works, love, or any other means, to become aware of this truth of our being, to realize it, to make it effective here or elsewhere, is the object of all yoga. And then we have our quarrels and our disagreements. Why? Easier for me to ask you.
I was supposed to ask you all the hard questions.
All right,
Yeah,
got it.
okay.
Okay, good. We spent 12 years building the Matrimandir Gardens nursery. 12 years, 1969 to 1981. Now, in 81, the Sri Aurobindo Society tried to take over Auroville. And one day, one of the Aurovillians working on the Matrimandir comes running to the nursery and says, they are killing Frederick and David with clubs. There were 200 gundas hired by the society. So 15 of us went there. I had a machete in my hand. Ha ha. And I got to the edge of the road, and the voice says to me, drop the weapon. I dropped it immediately. And I started calling Mother at the top of my voice, Ma, Ma, Ma. And I didn't stop. And those people parted like the Red Sea. I went in, I kept calling Mother. I put David Wickenden on my shoulder and carried him out. And I stopped calling Mother and gave him to B. And at that moment, a stone opened up my skull, and I was rushed to the hospital. And I still have the indentation. So, never stop calling Mother is the moral of this story. I came back, and it was a very painful return. I met the people of the working committee, and they were absolutely hostile. When I said I wanted to work at the Matrimandir Gardens again, One lady said to me, "How do we know you will work? Maybe you'll just walk around the gardens." Can you imagine that? And then they would hit me with all kinds of negatives. And when I would say something that Mother told me, they would say, "Everyone says that." Everyone doesn't say that Mother told them something. So I can ask if you have any questions that we can try to answer, or B can hit me with some of the hard ones. Yes, sir.
Which year was that when you encountered the committee
Um, about a year ago, I think. Yeah. I won't mention the people who were there. We don't need to do that because our aspiration should always be towards harmony. There's a plant called the hydrangea, and Mother named it collective harmony. And this hydrangea has hundreds and hundreds of new varieties and colors. And I know this is happening because of the supermental coming to Earth and beginning to change things. I can tell you there are hundreds of new flowers that you've never seen before, new fragrances, beauty such as we've never seen. And it's all because this force is so powerful. And if we can lean into this force or lean on this force or open to this force, all the rest of this is going to fade away.
So here's the hard question. What would Mother say now to this present situation? What do you think what message would she send? Because she sent so many messages in the early days when quarreling was going on. She said, no quarrels, underline, stop lying, underline. You know, all of these messages we have, of course they all apply today. But is there something you feel she would be saying to us at this point in time?
Many things. We can read the charter. We can read all that she said. And Gilles Guigan has put together 2 incredible books on Auroville and Mother's words. I'll quote something that Mother wrote in 1933. 2 things you must never forget. Sri Aurobindo's compassion and the Mother's love. As it is with these 2 things that you will go on fighting steadily, patiently, until the enemies are definitively routed and the victory is won forever. Courage outside, peace inside, and a quiet, unshakable trust in the divine's grace. That is going to carry us through. It cannot be by argument or even mediation. I believe we've passed that point now. And how this is going to be realized, I feel that Mother's going to do it for us because we are not capable right now of doing this. There's just too much friction on especially one side. And we cannot push things through without consensus of aspiration, harmony, unity. One has to realize that this is the most special place on earth. It is a crucible of the new generation. And all types are thrown here into this crucible to be worked upon, to be cleansed if possible, or to be eliminated if necessary. And one of those things are going to happen. It will need patience from us. It will need solid steadfastness in our material consciousness, because without that, it's just two sides unable to reach harmony or agreement.
Well, wouldn't you maybe say even our language, we have to clean it up in the sense there are not two sides, there are actually many sides, and that we take no side. Because if I remember correctly, Mother had mentioned, once you take a side, you are automatically out of the truth, because the truth is beyond that. So we're still perceiving that our fellow Aurovillians who are on what we are calling the other side are somehow wrong or bad or whatever, but their sincerity is, what they feel is their sincerity is driving them, and they feel that they're oppressed by the community itself because they're in a minority. And Auroville can't be built without the Aurovillians. So these people are also coming from another perspective, and so how do we deal with that?
Very powerful question. The ascent to the divine life is the human journey, the work of works, the acceptable sacrifice. This alone is man's real business in the world, and the justification of his existence, without which he would be only an insect crawling among other ephemeral insects on a speck of surface mud and water which has managed to form itself amid the appalling immensities of the physical universe. Sri Aurobindo in the Life Divine. Our work is the human journey to ascend to this divine life. How do we get over duality? How do we get over difference, contention, disenfranchisement? All of these things can only happen if we rise above body, mind, and life to the next stage of existence, which is the higher mind, the illumined mind, the intuitive mind, the overmind, and ultimately the supermind. All of us have to make that journey, and it doesn't matter whether it takes 10 years or 20 years or 10 lifetimes. Sri Aurobindo promises us that all of us who are here are going to one day realize the supermental. Every one of us. No one is exempted. Imagine that. All of us are going to be there in this new world.
And I would think that everybody in Auroville would absolutely agree with you on that. No matter who they are in the community, anyone who has some familiarity with the work of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, we can agree on that. We can agree on the charter, the dream, to be a true Aurovillian. We're agreeing on these things, but then we still can't manifest it on the ground. So to make this quantum leap, I call it, from the, let's call it the theory or the idea to the practice. So we're in that crucible, as you mentioned, and originally I think the Mother's idea of the Matrimandir was that people working together on the Matrimandir would learn how to work together, because if they couldn't, it wouldn't be built. But it got built, 37 years for one building, and it was completed by certain also outside forces. So we're at a stage now how to translate all this idealism into an actual concrete human unity. And so what would you say is the practical way to do that? And I think you already mentioned work is a way to do that, working together, harmony. Would you reflect on that?
The flower of the eucalyptus is called abolition of the ego. That's what we have to work on. Abolition of the ego. We all have our feelings. We all get hurt. We all react to situations. But this is still in this lower realm of body, life, and mind. We have to rise above that. And we have to do it as a collective. That's the secret of Auroville. When Mother was asked, what's the difference in the ashram and Auroville? Mother answered, the ashram will always be here for those who want to do the integral yoga. And then she said to my friend, and Auroville, it is so wide. Auroville is so wide, it's inclusive, it's the entire world that we are representing, that we are trying to ascend as a human soul, a collective soul, a sacred body. How do we get there? Abolition of the ego.
Well, also, many people say in Auroville, the world is falling apart. So naturally, Auroville will be falling apart. But if Auroville gets it together, then that has an influence on the world. And you remember how the mother in 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis, she got the ambassadors of Russia and America to go, and they were going to build Auroville. And then eventually the United Nations helped a little to start Auroville. So this is a prevention of World War III. She had talked about that. And right now, see, we're trying to build Brotherhood, the Russian pavilion. It's the conglomeration of 23 Soviet states, and it's blocked. It's not blocked by the people planting trees. It's blocked by the administration currently in power. So Putin is invading Ukraine. These things are happening. If we do our part here, let's say in the international zone, if India becomes really the mother of Auroville, and all the other nations of the world are able to establish something here symbolically, it will have an effect on the whole world. Now, do you think that kind of reasoning is appropriate, or?
I think it's right on, right on. Because we are Russia here. We are China. We are the US. We are Europe. We are all these nations, and we're all representatives in our small way of these nations. And so we carry something of us as Indians, as Americans. We carry something of us that is good and things that are not so good. And we have to overcome them by changing from an egocentric society to one of goodwill, humility, gratitude, and sincerity.
It seems to look like at the moment that things are going to get worse because it hasn't broken down enough that people are desperate so that they will cooperate, that they will collaborate. And as the financial crisis, it is inevitable, according to all the economists, is going to hit us, then the food supply, all the rest of it is going down. So do you think we need this kind of catastrophe? Because the mother said at one point, if you don't wake up, if you don't consciously collaborate with evolution, crushing circumstances will force you. So, do you feel we're going into that situation now where we're going to be forced because we're not moving consciously enough?
I think Mother said men, countries, continents. The choice is imperative, truth or the abyss. And ashram people said, Mother, you can't say. You say something so strong. And they wanted Mother to tone it down, but she didn't. We are very close to that abyss in the world. And the only thing that I can see that is going to save us is that Mother said there would be no seventh pralaya. There would be no full destruction of the earth again, as it was in Lemuria, Atlantis, and these other aspects of the earth that went down. So, yes.
One of the pralayas also what destroyed the dinosaurs? Is one of the pralayas also what destroyed the dinosaurs?
No, the dinosaurs were destroyed simply because of nature's experiments with new things, and they got outmoded. And we are now getting outmoded too, because Sri Aurobindo says man is a transitional being. He is not the final. And so Mother says that the Superman will be as different from man as man is from the animal. Wow.
From the ape. Please, it's good if any of you want to enter into this conversation. This is not a formal lecture, you know. We're all family here. This is so people. I see people would like to say things, so you're welcome to contribute any way you want. If you want the mic here.
Hi, Narad. I've heard about the Sri Aurobindo Society and Auroville, what we went through. But today, the way you described it, it's really making me feel guilty and confused. Because somewhere my unit, we have been constantly working with the Sri Aurobindo Society and even organizing many events. So right now, there's a tiny storm in me because Auroville is my family. What would you want to say to me on this?
Things change. And we are talking about many, many years ago. Many years ago. I don't know much about the society today, but I do know that it has branches all over the world, and they are doing good work in many areas. So let us not compare the past with the present. That was an episode, and Mother did not want them to be in charge of Auroville, just as Mother did not want the government to be in charge of Auroville. We should be very clear on that, very clear. The Matrimandir people have said we will take no donations from any government organization because we don't want that influence into the Matrimandir. I'm telling you things that are absolutely true. This is recorded. Yes, ma'am.
Here you can, because he's recording, so.
Hi. So, in context of what you said earlier, right now, so then there is not even Aurovillian and non-Aurovillian status in, like, the flower of eucalyptus, like getting out of the ego. So, stating yourself as Aurovillian or stating someone non-Aurovillian, and that, you know, there is always this distinction I've been hearing many times. So, in this journey of evolution, does that also count, or like that, like, was that anything said about that?
It's a very good question. For me, remember President Kennedy when he said, Ich bin ein Berliner. And he sided with the crashing of the wall. And that was Reagan, I think, he said to Gorbachev, Mr. Gorbachev, bring down that wall. We are all Aurovillians. Those who left Auroville, I was told, had a 6-year grace period in which they could return. Afterward, they would not be an Aurovillian. For me, they are always Aurovillians. They were the pioneers here. The Bill Immigs, the David Wickendens. There were so many that B and I knew who truly represented what Mother wanted here in Auroville. This transformation of this human animal to a divine being.
Ashwini, what you mentioned earlier, it reminds me of the hydrangea again, which is collective harmony. I don't see how your work is not in line with collective harmony at some level. That's it. You're welcome.
See, we can clarify about the Sri Aurobindo Society too, because, all these groups are people, and the people change. And there were people in the Sri Aurobindo Society who acted improperly and criminally at that time. And but they're gone. So,
And how did they go? It was Mother.
yeah. So these things are always evolving. We don't have to worry today about the Sri Aurobindo Society. There are people who are helping Auroville in some ways. So I don't think there's an issue there anymore. But there's still scars from the past. He's got one on his head. I've got a few on my legs. So we all got beat up. Not all of us, but a lot of us got beat up. And the body doesn't forget. So it's a little bit emotional and painful sometimes to think about those times. And so when this time started now, that was, I think, even harder for the people who went through the other one to say, okay, now we're going through this again. And this is much different, but it's much subtler in some ways because it's harder to deal with. At that time, it was really clear. They took the visa away. It wasn't that they delayed your visa, they took it away. So I lived for 2 years as an illegal alien in Auroville. But today it's a little more subtle, and that also has to go. And it will go. It will go. We know that. We have the faith. We went through a worse time. At that time, the Aurovillians, they had no money, they had no power, they had no legal status, they had nothing. And the Sri Aurobindo Society had everything. They had the deeds to the land, and they could do whatever they wanted under the law. So it was like, this is hopeless. Auroville's going to fail. Every single newspaper in India and the news magazine said, the supermental dream of Sri Aurobindo lies in the dust. It's over. Even the Los Angeles Times wrote a 2-page feature, Doomed Utopia Fails. It was over from the point of view of people who were intellectuals looking at this thing. They said, Auroville is finished, the founder died, people quarreled and destroyed it. But it came up out of the ashes. And we will do the same thing. We will do the same thing again. We know that now. We have the experience that the grace, as Narad has said, the grace will work. There's no question about that. No question. But if you have other questions. Yeah, say a little bit about the flowers. And the Nivas.
Where you're lifting up us to a very high level now. So
You went with Richard, some of
Yeah,
those
sure.
couple stories.
Okay. I began growing flowers in the nursery. We would work for 1 or 2 months, and in one day, the boys would send in the goats, and everything would be eaten. The work of 2 months wiped out in one day. How to overcome this? Well, we built fences, and they got through the fences, and So one day I caught a goat. And this boy came crying to me, please give me my goat back. I said, no, 25 rupees. And then the whole family came with many villagers, with katis and everything else. We're going to kill you unless you give it back. I said, no, 25 rupees. They gave the 25 rupees and we never saw a goat again. So in this time, I was very close with people from California, and we used to collect seeds of all the possible trees and flowers we could find. And I brought those with me when we came to begin the gardens. And what actually happened was that we grew many, many species that were perfectly suited to Bangalore. So I put everything in a big van, and I went and I met the director of the Lal Bagh, Dr. Mari Gowda, and gave him this whole van full of plants. He was so grateful that he gave me 15 huge Hawaiian hibiscus. And I would send these to Mother, and Tara would take them upstairs to Mother because Mother gave the significances in French, and I didn't know French. So, but I would stand downstairs by the Samadhi and listen to Mother saying, magnifique, superb. And so more than 60 flowers from the nursery were named by Mother, including opening to Sri Aurobindo's force, joy of union with the divine, and so many marvelous significances that Mother gave us. When I think back upon them, I remember taking the I Ching sticks to Mother and the flower. And Mother was so interested. She said, oh, this is okay. So I told her all of these things. And then Shamsundar was with me. And Shamsundar said to me, put your head in Mother's lap. I had never done that before. I had always put my head on her feet. And it was an experience that I tell you will live with me for many, many lives to come. Mother is still here. She is with us every day. And if we can even begin to feel her a little bit, we will find the answers to these dilemmas that now face us. They are seemingly insurmountable. But Sri Aurobindo says, today's impossibles are the future's possible. So, thank you. Yes. The work of the nursery, which is now being torn apart, was a most beautiful work because so many people came. In those days, there were very few areas. There was Bob and Deborah Lawler at Four Comers. There were a couple of other places, and we were growing thousands and thousands of trees every year in little plastic bags for the green belt. And I can go today to some of the greenbelt areas and they'll show me a tree that's 60, 70 feet high and say, this species you gave to us, and they knew the name of every species. It's incredible how beautiful everything has spread so naturally and so harmoniously. So, yes, the work of the nursery now is the work of the gardens themselves. And when people questioned Mother and said, why these gardens? And they would mock us. You people are playing around with flowers and we're building the structure. Mother wrote, the gardens are as important as the matrimandir. Imagine that. As important as the matrimandir structure. So I invite all of you to work with me on the future gardens. There are 6 of them still to build and 3 of them to rebuild. So we were only finishing Garden of Life and Power now, which was a work done by some architects hired from New Delhi who won the prize, and they were paid a lot of money. The gardens have to evolve in a new way, in a different way. They have to evolve amongst us, not some outside architectural firm. From our consciousness, our aspiration, our vision of things, and we share all of these things together, and the gardens will be built in the divine way. That I can assure you. They may have to be redone 100 times. That doesn't matter. They will be eventually what Mother told me. Yes.
Hello, Narad.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I have actually 2 questions. Because a certain part of the conversation between you and me dwelt on the past of Sri Aurobindo Society. There's something Mother says to the effect that everybody in Ashram Auroville have to abide by laws of India or respect laws of India. So from whatever I have observed in Auroville in the last 31 years, many times it occurs to me that this large section of Aurovillians, they're very ready to condemn whether it is past actions of Sri Aurobindo Society or somebody else right now or sometime else in the past. But when something wrong or something criminal is done by Aurovillian residents, many groups and many individuals are too eager to condone and cover up these Aurovillians. So there's a lot of, contradiction in that attitude.
Okay, I will answer you.
Yeah.
These things should not be overblown also, because we're all human. We're all aspiring. And to make something huge of something that was much smaller would be incorrect. We want to find a way to clear ourselves of, what shall I say, extraneous institutions, and perhaps the government is not the answer for Auroville. It certainly is not the answer for the Matrimandir. Matrimandir does not allow any donations from governmental bodies. And you can understand why. This VIP, that VIP, I want to go to chamber now. No, this cannot be. So Matrimandir has been very clear on this. The rest of Auroville is not so clear. Now, what is happening now, and I must tell you honestly, I meet the secretary regularly. I read Sri Aurobindo and Mother to her. She holds my hands. We talk about the future. Now, people can question her sincerity, but I don't. I feel that in each one of us, there is something very true, and we have to touch that truth in each of us. We have to learn humility. I'll tell you a story of the ashram service tree that has cast its shade over millions of people as they've come. One time the branches were growing a little bit low on one side, and immediately the ashram gardeners wanted to cut those branches. I wrote to Mother, and you know what Mother said? They must learn how to bow. all have to learn how to bow, how to truly feel the oneness that is in each of us. Because Sri Aurobindo says that the divine is in each of us. He's just hidden by all the veils we have put around us, endless veils that have to be rent, torn apart, so that he can come through and we can be divine. You know, there is no religion in the world that says man can become the divine. All the religions, even Christianity, says, yes, you can be a son of God, but you can never be God. Sri Aurobindo has brought this to us. And not only brought it to us, but brought down this power of the supramental force, which is the only force that has the power to change our lives. And unless and until we understand this, we won't progress. Whether it's one side or another side does not matter to me. All sides have to become united or leave. That's another possibility. We should be very clear with each other that this is a place for the growth of the human soul on human soil, and not some other heaven someplace else, but here on earth. And only Sri Aurobindo and the Mother have told us that the earth is the spirit's home. The earth is divine, and we have to work to keep it divine, make it more beautiful, clear up pollution, clear up carbon footprints, clear up all of these things, plastic bags, everything. This is our work, but it's not simply a work of generosity of one group going around and collecting this and that. No, it's understanding that Earth is a conscious being, and the world is only the form it takes to manifest.
Narad,
Yes.
actually, I asked this to get a very clear answer. I still didn't get a clear answer. Also, this VIP thing that most of us detest to see, like say VIPs coming to Matri Mandir, as a low-profile, ordinary resident in Auroville, I see this VIP culture is everywhere in most of the groups in Auroville. You go to entry board, housing service, wherever. Even if a small issue, like, people who have connections, they get things done. People who have something or the other, they get a VIP treatment or a special privilege. People who follow the straightforward way, you are just pushed in the background. You can wait your whole lifetime, nothing moves. And it's really disgusting, horrible in Auroville. You can ask this to many people who don't have any influence, who don't like to use influence. And this is what, like, I find it's, you can get very upset with this if you are an ordinary resident, because so many people, like, readily pounce upon VIPs. I also hate it, but why the so-called Aurovillians occupying small seats of power, they get bloated with this power drunkenness.
Okay, I'll answer your question. Have you changed yourself? Have you changed yourself? Okay. Do you still see that all these people should be out of Auroville and only saints can be here? Then what do you feel about these people?
About minor flaws and mistakes. I'm talking about like really stinking corruption, violation of laws. Human flaws, imperfections are okay. Here I'm talking about serious violations. serious corruption.
Not minor things.
Have you documented them?
I have evidence for some.
Now, have you documented them?
I am not an investigative journalist to document.
Well, I think what Vijaya is saying is also many people feel like she does. And that's a legitimate feeling because it's true that there is a certain amount of corruption in Auroville that is covered over. And a person who just comes to Auroville new is very much at a disadvantage to try to get things done, to get a house, to do certain things. So that frustration is there. We have to acknowledge that, and she is voicing it very well, articulating a feeling that is there among a certain part of the population, and we just have to accept that that's there, and then we can work on it. It's good it's out on the table, and not said, oh no, in Auroville we're treating everybody with equality, and it's it's wonderful, and here we are in paradise. No, we have to face these issues, I think.
Very true, very true. But we have to face them with equanimity and not anger and not frustration. And we have to face them with love, because it's only divine love that can change any of this. Things will not change without the divine love. And that has to come from each of us. And it has to be a very powerful, pure force.
That's a very good place to end, with divine love. There's one more. Yes.
So earlier you said we can participate in the making of the gardens. Could you let us know how?
Yes, certainly. Contact me and we'll continue. We need help. We need help. So you'll be most welcome.
I think any morning anyone can go to Matramandir early. You have to go early. And Kartik and Narad and others are there. They will take you in immediately. So, yeah. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Rani does that very often, so she's there, and we have other people here who do it too. So there's no problem about that. You walk right in any morning, like tomorrow.
But let me know when you're going to walk in, or they'll stop you from going in.
No, you say it. You say to the guard, I've sent volunteers in there. I say, I'm going to work with Kartik. They let you in like that. They still don't know Narad, all of them.
So I told you about the accident, but I didn't tell you the end of the accident. We collected $3,000 for medical expenses. I wrote to Mother and told her, Mother, I want to send you this money because you saved our lives. Mother writes back, why don't you use the money to come for the inauguration of Auroville? Each ticket was $1,500, exactly $3,000. Every penny was used up on that flight. So Mother gave me permission to photograph the entire ceremony, which I did, and those transparencies are now in the Auroville archives. You know, I can tell you negative things too about people who have been removed from their duties, who have been people who have been so diligent and so respectful. And Gilles Guigan is one of them. He had worked on these archives for years after General Tiwari. And he had built up a fantastic work of archival work. And one day he was simply removed and someone else put in his position. Well, you can imagine that he's a bit upset and bitter about this whole thing. And these are the things that we have to overcome by love, by unity, by humility, by aspiration, and by prayer. And let's end with a prayer for the unity of Auroville. I can assure you of one thing. Auroville will never fail. It is the divine's work, and it will be realized as the paradigm of the new creation. Maybe another day we can do more on flowers.